Good morning. It's shining here in Nairobi. The sun is out today. The last few days have been a bit chilly and rainy. I wish to first and foremost take this opportunity to thank Daniel Desai of Radical Communication for his commitment in spearheading the organization of the Agri-Tech Conference, not just this year, but almost every year since 2014. However, this year, unlike in the past, we are doing this virtually because of the COVID-19 containment measures, which has led us to a new normal. When I was briefed about this virtual meeting, I was curious to see how the exhibition would run virtually. I hope it will be as informative and as exciting as the physical events, and hopefully we'll contain COVID and go back to normal in the future. The event runs from 23rd, 29th November, and the theme of this year's conference is Improving Farmers' Incomes Through Technology. Improving farmers' income is a big part of our agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy, especially the incomes of smallholder farmers. And I know accessing the right seeds and the right inputs and the right mechanization and the right post-harvest handling technologies and other technologies is key part of this increasing on farmers' income. So our role as key stakeholders in the preparation of this conference is to mobilize various organizations and companies that are involved in technologies which support agricultural production. Very important that we have an ecosystem of support for especially the smallholder farmer. And I understand that a lot needs to be done that will require our involvement and support. I therefore call upon relevant agencies of government and concerned course. Benefits of this event largely includes learning and sharing of best technologies, and practices that farmers can adopt in order to increase their productivity and incomes, promotion of trade, and the greater Africa and other continents. That will result in sparse growth in the sector. We all know that agriculture is a major driver of growth for the Kenyan economy and is the dominant source of employment. In 2018, agriculture sector contributed 34.2% of gross domestic product, with more than 40% of the total labor force employed in agriculture. The sector also responsible for most of the country's exports, accounting for up to 65% of merchandise export. As such, the sector is central to the government's big for development agenda, where agriculture aims to attain 100% food and nutrition security for all Kenyans by 2022. According to the ASTGS, agriculture is expected to improve the lives of approximately 13 million Kenyans while contributing an additional 170 billion to the economy for the next 5 years from 2019. To achieve these targets, the ministry is committed to working with various partners, private sector players, and government agencies to promote efficient technologies that stimulate agricultural production. Such technologies include technologies in water harvesting, irrigation, land preparation, planting, weeding, harvesting, post-harvest management, and agro-processing of farm products. Farmers and entrepreneurs in agriculture also require technologies that provide energy in order to facilitate their activities and processes. Technologies that provide energy from sources such as tractor, drone, motorized electricity, biomass, wind, water, and solar will be of paramount importance to our clientele during the exhibition. It is my belief that the Agri-Tech exhibition and conference will provide a suitable platform for learning of these technologies and networking for agribusiness and trade promotion. Our SMEs can take advantage of the Agri-Tech to source for appropriate technologies that best serve our farmers, most of whom are, of course, are smallholder farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, the wider variety of local content from local exhibitors will make the forum favorable to our people, with the youthful farmers embracing innovative technologies in agriculture adoption of new farming methods will be accelerated, thus contributing to the broad national objective of reducing hunger and increasing incomes of rural farmers in the face of COVID-19 and beyond. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, my great pleasure to officially inaugurate the 7th virtual edition of the Agritech Africa 2020. I wish to call upon all of us to effectively participate, interact, engage, and share in this successful event to adopt, customize, and adapt better food production technologies for the achievement of 100% food and nutrition security in Kenya. And with those, I officially open the fair and wish you all the best as you continue with the rest of the program. Thank you very much, and over to you, moderator and the event organizer.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those great opening remarks. I hope you are going to stay with us for a bit. But, just to start you off, that we are discussing here about policies impacting food and agriculture, with a special interest on what we call smart foods. This includes sorghum and millets, which are very critical for food security in areas like the arid and semi-arid lands. If I may ask, what policies have you put in place to promote these crops in the ASALs? When we move around in these regions, we still find that there is a lot of inclination towards maize production, despite that maize really struggles in these areas because of the low rainfall. So can you just shed more light on what policies are in place really to support that these crops, they get into those niches where they really thrive and be able to provide food security for the communities of the ASALs? Over to you.
Yeah, I am one of those people who is skeptical about growing maize everywhere. And we have come up with a Maize for Kenya strategy that says we focus on increasing productivity in the areas with enough rainfall to support maize growing. While in the ASAL areas, we diversify to other more drought-tolerant crops, including sorghum and millet and cassava, and other more drought-tolerant crops. Of course, the biggest challenge is adoption by the common man and woman to see whether they are able to move their appetite for growing maize to these other crops. The other challenge, of course, is access to seeds. And luckily, through the Calro seed unit, there are seeds for these varieties, including cassava cuttings, to support the farmers. But I think the biggest obstacle to adoption is just behavior, human behavior, and we are trying to work on that. The other big obstacle is markets. Sometimes we find farmers who have grown cassava and they don't know how to get it to the market because the processing part is a little bit weak. And here we have created standards for blending with different blends so that we can create a market for sorghum, millet, cassava, and other products that can be blended with maize flour. And the policy is to blend up to 30%. But of course, there has been challenges and resistance from millers who feel it's expensive for them to redesign their mills to accommodate blending. But we are discussing to see how to make that transition. Otherwise, I think we want to sensitize farmers that growing maize in these ASAL areas is not sustainable, it's expensive, And most of these places are infested with aflatoxins. So it becomes a double loss because you don't produce enough, and what you produce, most of it, most of the time, is full of aflatoxin. I think this battle for a shift from maize will be won not just by policy, but by challenging the cultural attachment to maize, and by providing seed system and for these other products and blending them with maize so that we can create a market. Let me summarize it like that.
Response. At this point, I would like to open this discussion and get questions from our participants. We have one question already, which is in the chat box. This question is asking, is there any discussion in Kenya or ECOWAS governments to provide additional support for foods that are more nutritious? So Professor, you can take it, or Mr. Anthony Murithi. Yeah.
From my end, I haven't come across any discussions apart from the discussions we had when we were developing the blending guidelines and the standards. The rest is still, we have a fund for crop diversification ourselves. So, and that was basically meant to promote other crops other than maize, but it's not very, very robust. But we know because almost 70% of Kenya is ASAL, that the potential for feeding ourselves is in ASAL areas, but not with maize, but with other crops that are better suited for these kinds of environments.
Probably my own question is going to be around seed, because this is an area where ICRISAT and CARO have been working over the last decades, making sure that crops like sorghum and millets, they have improved seeds. I think a number of varieties are available, but we have not really seen a lot of efforts in terms of, getting the seeds, in the systems. We see a lot of agro dealers still just having the usual maize and groundnuts. Is there anything really that we can work together to make sure that the farmers are first of all aware that there's improved seeds to these for this type of crops? Secondly, is there any way that we can again work with private sector, the agro dealers and seed companies, to make sure that they prioritize crops like these? As you said, the ASALs are probably a better place for other crops than maize. Yeah, so over to you, Professor Hamadi.
I think the ministry is working closely with the private sector. We have regular meetings every 2 weeks. The ministry is also working with agro dealers as we implement input support program called the Smart Subsidy Program, where we use the e-voucher to empower the farmers to access soil testing seeds and some agronomic advice, as well as pest control products and post-harvest handling technologies. So there's a close linkage with the agro dealers. We register the farmers in a given area and register the agro dealers, and then working with banks and the mobile money service providers, we are able to support the farmer with up to 40%, which enables them now to access the inputs that they like. I think the challenge is one of the crops we are supporting is sorghum. and Irish potatoes, and of course maize, coffee, and yeah, I think and rice. So we supporting a diversity of crops. Support for other millet, cassava could be much better because they are newer crops, and in order to promote adoption, we could push this deliberately, but we haven't for some of these crops.
Thank you very much. There is another question from the audience. A suggestion to official speakers: FAO has approved 2023 as a UN International Year of Millets. This can be an opportunity for Kenya and Africa to further develop their value chains. I think this is probably the message to all of us. I think there is already a good example that we have learned from Professor that one of them is to work on blending of flowers for these commodities, but also the seeds. Okay, I don't see any additional questions from our audience, but I just want to ask Professor, if you be switching to your other meeting, then would like to ask you to give us probably one or two remarks, basically on the take-home messages from this session, so that we don't lose any wisdom from you. Yeah, over to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you. I'll be switching over to the other meeting because I was still the chair there. But what I would like to say is that we need to invest more in agriculture because it's still the mainstay of our economies. We also need to trust more the involvement of the private sector along the various components of the value chain, from financing to input supply to the actual farming and to the other market end and the post-harvest end. I think working with the private sector will bring in efficiency. We need to reduce the role of the government here because the government is not, but it's in the business of regulating and creating an enabling environment. I think in the past, subsidy policies have distorted the market and therefore denied the private sector the opportunity to compete, which would have the effect of probably bringing the prices down. And so I think the less appetite we have for intervening in the market, the less we can experience distortion, either of commodities or of inputs like fertilizer. I think the other thing is that smallholder farming is good, and it's the largest form of farming globally, with over 500 million smallholder family farms. But I think in Africa, we need to invest a little bit more in large-scale farms, including those ASAL areas where we still have land. We invest under conservation agriculture that will still lead to good yields and food security for the country. So let me stop there and wish the meeting good success as you proceed.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate these remarks.